So spake the enemy of mankind, enclosed in serpent, inmate bad, and toward Eve addressed his way, not with indented wave prone on the ground as since, but on his rear, circular base of rising folds that towered fold above fold a surging maze, his head crested aloft, and carbuncle his eyes, with burnished neck of verdant gold erect amidst his circling spires that on the grass floated redundant. Pleasing was his shape, and lovely, never since of serpent kind lovelier, not those that in Illyria changed Hermione and Cadmus, or the god in Epidaurus, nor to which transformed Ammonium Jove or Capitoline was seen. He with Olympias, this with her who bore Scipio the height of Rome, with tract oblique at first, as one who sought access but feared to interrupt, sidelong he works his way, as when a ship by skilful steersman wrought nigh river's mouth or foreland, where the wind veers oft, as oft so steers, and shifts her sail, so varied he, and of his tortuous train curled many a wanton wreath in sight of Eve, to lure her eye. She, busied, heard the sound of rustling leaves, but minded not, as used to such disport before her through the field from every beast, more duteous at her call, than at Circean call the herd disguised. He, bolder now, uncalled before her stood, but as in gaze admiring, oft he bowed his turret crest and sleek enamelled neck, fawning, and licked the ground whereon she trod. His gentle, dumb expression turned at length the eye of Eve to mark his play. He, glad of her attention gained, with serpent tongue organic, or impulse of vocal air, his fraudulent temptation thus began. Wonder not, sovereign mistress, if perhaps thou canst, who art sole wonder, much less arm thy looks, the heaven of mildness, with disdain, displeased that I approach thee thus and gaze insatiate. I thus single, nor have feared thy awful brow, more awful thus retired. Fairest resemblance of thy Maker fair, thee all things living gaze on, all things thine by gift, and thy celestial beauty adore, with ravishment beheld. There best beheld where universally admired, but here, in this enclosure wild, these beasts among beholders rude, and shallow to discern half what in thee is fair, one man except. Who sees thee, and what is one, who should be seen a goddess among gods, adored and served by angels numberless, thy daily train? So glozed the Tempter, and his proem tuned. Into the heart of Eve his words made way, though at the voice much marvelling. At length, not unamazed, she thus in answer spake, What may this mean? Language of man pronounced by tongue of brute, and human sense expressed? The first, at least, of these I thought denied to beasts, whom God on their creation day created mute to all articulate sound. The latter I demur, for in their looks much reason, and in their actions oft appears. Thee, serpent, subtlest beast of all the field, I knew, but not with human voice endued. Redouble then this miracle, and say, how camest thou speakable of mute, and how to me so friendly grown above the rest of brutal kind that daily are in sight? Say, for such wonder claims attention due. To whom the guileful Tempter thus replied, Empress of this fair world, resplendent Eve, easy to me it is to tell thee all what thou commandest, and right thou shouldst be obeyed. I was at first as other beasts that graze the trodden herb, of abject thoughts, and low as was my food, nor aught but food discerned or sex, and apprehended nothing high. Till, On a day roving the field I chanced a goodly tree far distant to behold, loaden with fruit of fairest colours mixed, ruddy and gold. I nearer drew to gaze, when from the boughs a savoury odour blown, grateful to appetite, more pleased my sense than smell of sweetest fennel, or the teats of ewe or goat dropping with milk at even, unsucked of lamb or kid, that tend their play. To satisfy the sharp desire I had of tasting those fair apples, I resolved not to defer. Hunger and thirst at once, powerful persuaders, quickened at the scent of that alluring fruit, urged me so keen. About the mossy trunk I wound me soon, for high from ground the branches would require thy utmost reach or Adam's. Round the tree all other beasts that saw, with like desire longing and envying stood, but could not reach. Amid the tree now got, where plenty hung tempting so nigh, to pluck and eat my fill I spared not, for such pleasure till that hour at feed or fountain never had I found. Sated at length, ere long I might perceive strange alteration in me, to degree of reason in my inward powers, and speech wanted not long, though to this shape retained. Thenceforth to speculations high or deep I turned my thoughts, and with capacious mind considered all things visible in heaven or earth or middle, all things fair and good. But all that fair and good in thy divine semblance, and in thy beauty's heavenly ray, united I beheld, no fair to thine equivalent or second. Which compelled me thus, though importune perhaps, to come and gaze, and worship thee of right declared sovereign of creatures, universal dame. So talked the spirited sly snake, and Eve, yet more amazed, unwary, thus replied, Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt the virtue of that fruit in thee first proved. But say, where grows the tree? From hence how far? For many are the trees of God that grow in paradise, and various, yet unknown to us. In such abundance lies our choice, as leaves a greater store of fruit untouched, still hanging incorruptible, till men grow up to their provision, and more hands help to disburden nature of her birth. To whom the wily adder, blithe and glad, Empress, the way is ready, and not long. Beyond a row of myrtles, on a flat, fast by a fountain, one small thicket past of blowing myrrh and balm. If thou accept my conduct, I can bring thee thither soon. Lead then, said Eve. He, leading, swiftly rolled in tangles and made intricate seem straight to mischief swift. Hope elevates, and joy brightens his crest, as when a wandering fire, compact of unctuous vapour, which the night condenses and the cold environs round, kindled through agitation to a flame, which oft, they say, some evil spirit attends, hovering and blazing with delusive light, misleads the amazed night wanderer from his way to bogs and mires, and oft through pond or pool, there swallowed up and lost from succour far. So glistered the dire snake, and into fraud led Eve, our credulous mother, to the tree of prohibition, root of all our woe. Which when she saw, thus to her guide she spake. Serpent, we might have spared our coming hither, fruitless to me, though fruit be here to excess, the credit of whose virtue rest with thee, wondrous indeed if cause of such effects. But of this tree we may not taste nor touch. God so commanded, and left that command sole daughter of his voice. The rest we live law to ourselves, our reason is our law. To whom the tempter guilefully replied, Indeed, hath God then said that of the fruit of all these garden trees ye shall not eat, yet lords declared of all in earth or air? To whom thus Eve, yet sinless, Of the fruit of each tree in the garden we may eat, but of the fruit of this fair tree amidst the garden God hath said, Ye shall not eat thereof, nor shall ye touch it, lest ye die. She scarce had said, though brief, when now more bold the Tempter, but with show of zeal and love to man, and indignation at his wrong, new part puts on, and as to passion moved, fluctuates disturbed, yet comely, and in act raised, as of some great matter to begin. As when of old some orator renowned, in Athens or free Rome where eloquence flourished, since mute, to some great cause addressed, stood in himself collected, while each part, motion, each act, one audience ere the tongue, sometimes in height began, as no delay of preface brooking, through his zeal of right, so standing, moving, or to height upgrown, the Tempter, all impassioned, thus began. O sacred, wise, and wisdom-giving plant, mother of science, now I feel thy power within me clear, not only to discern things in their causes, but to trace the ways of highest agents, deemed however wise. Queen of this universe, do not believe those rigid threats of death. Ye shall not die. How should you? By the fruit. It gives you life to knowledge. By the threatener, look on me, who have touched and tasted, yet both live, and life more perfect have attained than fate meant me, by venturing higher than my lot. Shall that be shut to man, which to the beast is open, or will God incense his ire for such a petty trespass, and not praise rather your dauntless virtue, whom the pain of death denounced, whatever thing death be, deterred not from achieving what might lead to happier life, knowledge of good and evil? Of good, how just? Of evil, if what is evil be real, why, not known, since easier shunned. God therefore cannot hurt ye and be just. Not just, not God. Not feared then, nor obeyed. Your fear itself of death removes the fear. Why then was this forbid? Why but to awe? Why but to keep ye low and ignorant, his worshippers? He knows that in the day ye eat thereof, your eyes that seem so clear, yet are but dim, shall perfectly be then opened and cleared, and ye shall be as gods, knowing both good and evil as they know, that ye shall be as gods, since I as man, internal man, is but proportion meet, I of brute, human, ye of human, gods. So ye shall die, perhaps, by putting off human to put on gods, death to be wished, though threatened, which no worse than this can bring. And what are gods, that man may not become as they, participating godlike food? The gods are first, and that advantage use on our belief that all from them proceeds. I question it. For this fair earth I see, warmed by the sun, producing every kind, them nothing. If they all things, who enclosed knowledge of good and evil in this tree, that whoso eats thereof forthwith attains wisdom without their leave? And wherein lies the offence that man should thus attain to know? What can your knowledge hurt him, or this tree impart against his will, if all be his? Or is it envy? And can envy dwell in heavenly breasts? These and many more causes import your need of this fair fruit, goddess humane. Reach, then, and freely taste. He ended, and his words, replete with guile, into her heart too easy entrance won. Fixed on the fruit she gazed, which to behold might tempt alone, and in her ears the sound yet rung of his persuasive words, impregned with reason to her seeming, and with truth. Meanwhile the hour of noon drew on, and waked an eager appetite, raised by the smell so savoury of that fruit, which with desire, inclinable now grown to touch or taste, solicited her longing eye. Yet first, pausing a while thus to herself, she mused. Great are thy virtues, doubtless, best of fruits, though kept from man and worthy to be admired, whose taste, too long forborne, at first assay gave elocution to the mute, and taught the tongue not made for speech to speak thy praise. Thy praise he also, who forbids thy use, conceals not from us, naming thee the tree of knowledge, knowledge both of good and evil. Forbids us then to taste, but his forbidding commends thee more, while it infers the good by thee communicated, and our want. For good unknown, sure is not had, or had and yet unknown, is as not had at all. In plain, then, what forbids he but to know, forbids us good, forbids us to be wise? Such prohibitions bind not. But if death bind us with afterbands, what profits then our inward freedom? In the day we eat of this fair fruit, our doom is we shall die. How dies the serpent? He hath eaten, and lives, and knows, and speaks, and reasons, and discerns, irrational till then. For us alone was death invented, or to us denied this intellectual food for beasts reserved? For beasts, it seems, yet that one beast which first hath tasted envies not, but brings with joy the good befallen him, author unsuspect, friendly to man, far from deceit or guile. What fear I then? Rather, what know to fear under this ignorance of good and evil, of God or death, of law or penalty? Here grows the cure of all. This fruit divine, fair to the eye, inviting to the taste, of virtue to make wise. What hinders then? To reach and feed at once both body and mind. So saying, her rash hand, in evil hour forth reaching to the fruit, she plucked, she ate. Earth felt the wound, and nature, from her seat, sighing through all her works, gave signs of woe, that all was lost. Back to the thicket slunk the guilty serpent, and well might, for Eve, intent now wholly on her taste, naught else regarded. Such delight till then as seemed in fruit she never tasted, whether true or fancied so, through expectation high of knowledge, nor was Godhead from her thought. Greedily she engorged, without restraint, and knew not eating death. Satiate at length, and heightened as with wine, jocund and boon, thus to herself she pleasingly began. O sovereign, virtuous, precious of all trees in paradise, of operation blessed to sapience, hitherto obscured, infamed, and thy fair fruit let hang, as to no end created, but henceforth my early care, not without song each morning and due praise, shall tend thee, and the fertile burden ease of thy full branches offered free to all, till, dieted by thee, I grow mature in knowledge as the gods who all things know, though others envy what they cannot give. For had the gift been theirs, it had not here thus grown. Experience next to thee I owe, best guide. Not following thee, I had remained in ignorance. Thou openst wisdom's way, and givest access, though secret she retire, and I perhaps am secret. Heaven is high, high and remote to see from thence distinct each thing on earth, and other care perhaps may have diverted from continual watch our great forbidder, safe with all his spies about him. But to Adam in what sort shall I appear? Shall I to him make known as yet my change, and give him to partake full happiness with me, or rather not, but keep the odds of knowledge in my power, without co-partner? So to add what once in female sex, the more to draw his love, and render me more equal, and perhaps a thing not undesirable, sometime superior, for inferior who is free. This may be well. But what if God have seen, and death ensue? Then I shall be no more, and Adam wedded to another Eve shall live with her enjoying, I extinct, a death to think. Confirmed then I resolve, Adam shall share with me in bliss or woe. So dear I love him that with him all deaths I could endure, without him live no life. So saying, from the tree her step she turned, but first low reverence done as to the power that dwelt within, whose presence had infused into the plant's sciental sap, derived from nectar, drink of gods. Adam the while, waiting desirous her return, had wove of choicest flowers a garland, to adorn her tresses and her rural labours crown, as reapers oft are wont their harvest queen. Great joy he promised to his thoughts, and new solace in her return so long delayed. Yet oft his heart, divine of something ill, misgave him. He the faltering measure felt, and forth to meet her went the way she took that morn when first they parted. By the tree of knowledge he must pass. There he her met, scarce from the tree returning. In her hand a bough of fairest fruit that down he smiled, new gathered, and ambrosial smell diffused. To him she hasted. In her face excuse came prologue, and apology to prompt, which with bland words at will she thus addressed. Hast thou not wondered, Adam, at my stay? Thee I have missed, and thought it long deprived thy presence. Agony of love till now not felt, nor shall be twice, for never more mean I to try what rash untried I sought, the pain of absence from thy sight. But strange hath been the cause, and wonderful to hear. This tree is not, as we are told, a tree of danger tasted, nor to evil unknown opening the way, but of divine effect, to open eyes and make them gods who taste, and hath been tasted such. The serpent wise, or not restrained as we, or not obeying, hath eaten of the fruit, and is become, not dead, as we are threatened, but thenceforth endued with human voice and human sense, reasoning to admiration. And with me persuasively hath so prevailed that I have also tasted, and have also found the effects to correspond. Opener mine eyes, dim erst, dilated spirits, ampler heart, and growing up to Godhead, which for thee chiefly I sought, without thee can despise. For bliss, as thou hast part, to me is bliss, tedious unshared with thee, and odious soon. Thou therefore also taste, that equal lot may join us, equal joy as equal love, lest thou not tasting, different degree disjoin us, and I then too late renounce deity for thee, when fate will not permit. Thus Eve with countenance blithe her story told, but in her cheek distemper flushing glowed. On the other side Adam, soon as he heard the fatal trespass done by Eve, amazed, astoned stood, and blank, while horror chill ran through his veins and all his joints, relaxed. From his slack hand the garland, wreathed for Eve, down dropped, and all the faded roses shed. Speechless he stood, and pale, till thus at length, first to himself, he inward silence broke. O fairest of creation, last and best of all God's works, creature in whom excelled whatever can to sight or thought be formed, holy, divine, good, amiable or sweet. How art thou lost? How on a sudden lost? Defaced, deflowered, and now to death devoked. Rather, how hast thou yielded to transgress the strict forbiddance, how to violate the sacred fruit forbidden? Some cursed fraud of enemy hath beguiled thee yet unknown, and me with thee hath ruined, for with thee certain my resolution is to die. How can I live without thee? How forego thy sweet converse and love so dearly joined, to live again in these wild woods forlorn? Should God create another Eve and I another river ford, yet loss of thee would never from my heart. No, no, I feel the link of nature draw me. Flesh of flesh, bone of my bone thou art, and from thy state mine never shall be parted, bliss or woe. So having said, as one from sad dismay, recomforted and after thoughts disturbed, submitting to what seemed remediless, thus in calm mood his words to Eve he turned. Bold deed thou hast presumed, adventurous Eve, and peril great provoked, who thus hast dared, had it been only coveting to eye that sacred fruit, sacred to abstinence, much more to taste it under ban to touch. But past, who can recall, or done undo? Not God omnipotent, nor fate. Yet so perhaps thou shalt not die. Perhaps the fact is not so heinous now, for tasted fruit, profaned first by the serpent, by him first made common and unhallowed ere our taste. Nor yet on him found deadly. Yet he lives, lives as thou saidst, and gains to live as man higher degree of life, inducement strong to us as likely tasting to attain proportional assent, which cannot be but to be gods, or angels, demigods. Nor can I think that God, creator wise, though threatening, will in earnest so destroy us, his prime creatures dignified so high, set over all his works, which in our fall for us created needs with us must fail, dependent made. So God shall uncreate, be frustrate, do, undo, and labour lose, not well conceived of God, who though his power creation could repeat, yet would be loath us to abolish, lest the adversary triumph, and say, fickle their state whom God most favours, who can please him long? Me first he ruined, now mankind. Whom will he next? Matter of scorn, not to be given the foe. However, I with thee have fixed my lot, certain to undergo like doom. If death consort with thee, death is to me as life. So forcible within my heart I feel the bond of nature draw me to my own in thee, for what thou art is mine. Our state cannot be severed, we are one flesh. To lose thee were to lose myself. So Adam, and thus Eve to him replied, O glorious trial of exceeding love, illustrious evidence, example high, engaging me to emulate. But, short of thy perfection, how shall I attain, Adam, from whose dear side I boast me sprung, and gladly of our union hear thee speak, one heart, one soul in both, whereof good proof this day affords, declaring thee resolved rather than death, or aught than death more dread, shall separate us, linked in love so dear, to undergo with me one guilt, one crime, if any be, of tasting this fair fruit, whose virtue for of good still good proceeds, direct or by occasion hath presented this happy trial of thy love, which else so eminently never had been known. Were it, I thought, death menaced would ensue, this my attempt, I would sustain alone the worst, and not persuade thee, rather die deserted, than oblige thee with a fact pernicious to thy peace. Chiefly assured remarkably so late of thy so true, so faithful love unequalled. But I feel far otherwise the event, not death, but life, augmented, opened eyes, new hopes, new joys, taste so divine, that what of sweet before hath touched my sense, flat seems to this, and harsh. On my experience, Adam, freely taste, and fear of death delivered to the winds. So saying, she embraced him, and for joy tenderly wept, much won that he his love had so ennobled, as of choice to incur divine displeasure for her sake, or death. In recompense, for such compliance bad, such recompense best merits, from the bough she gave him of that fair enticing fruit with liberal hand. He scrupled not to eat, against his better knowledge, not deceived, but fondly overcome with female charm. Earth trembled from her entrails, as again in pangs, and nature gave a second groan. Sky lowered, and muttering thunder some sad drops wept at completing of the mortal sin original. While Adam took no thought, eating his fill, nor Eve to iterate her former trespass feared, the more to soothe him with her loved society, that now, as with new wine intoxicated both, they swim in mirth, and fancy that they feel divinity within them breeding wings wherewith to scorn the earth. But that false fruit far other operation first displayed, carnal desire inflaming. He on Eve began to cast lascivious eyes, she him as wantonly repaid. In lust they burn, till Adam thus 'gan Eve to dalliance move. Eve, now I see thou art exact of taste, and elegant, of sapience no small part, since to each meaning savour we apply, and palate called judicious. I the praise yield thee so well this day thou hast purveyed. Much pleasure we have lost, while we abstained from this delightful fruit, nor known till now true relish tasting. If such pleasure be in things to us forbidden, it might be wished for this one tree had been forbidden 10. But come, so well refreshed, now let us play, as meet is after such delicious fare. For never did thy beauty, since the day I saw thee first and wedded thee, adorned with all perfection, so inflame my sense with ardour to enjoy thee, fairer now than ever, bounty of this virtuous tree. So said he, and forbore not glance or toy of amorous intent. Well understood of Eve, whose eye darted contagious fire, her hand he seized, and to a shady bank, thick overhead with verdant roof embowered, he led her nothing loath. Flowers were the couch, pansies and violets and asphodel and hyacinth, earth's freshest, softest lap. There they their fill of love and love's disport took largely, of their mutual guilt, the seal, the solace of their sin, till dewy sleep oppressed them, wearied with their amorous play. Soon as the force of that fallacious fruit, that with exhilarating vapour bland about their spirits had played, and inmost powers made err, was now exhaled, and grosser sleep, bred of unkindly fumes with conscious dreams encumbered, now had left them, up they rose as from unrest, and each the other viewing, soon found their eyes how opened, and their minds how darkened. Innocence, that as a veil had shadowed them from knowing ill, was gone. Just confidence and native righteousness and honour from about them naked left to guilty shame. He covered, but his robe uncovered more. So rose the Danite strong, Herculean Samson from the harlot lap of Philistine Delilah, and waked shorn of his strength. They destitute and bare of all their virtue, silent and in face confounded long they sat, as struck and mute, till Adam, though not less than Eve abashed, at length gave utterance to these words constrained. O Eve, in evil hour thou didst give ear to that false worm, of whomsoever taught to counterfeit man's voice, true in our fall, false in our promised rising. Since our eyes opened we find indeed, and find we know both good and evil, good lost and evil got. Bad fruit of knowledge if this be to know, which leaves us naked thus of honour void, of innocence, of faith, of purity, our wonted ornaments now soiled and stained, and in our faces evident the signs of foul concupiscence. Whence evil store, even shame, the last of evils, of the first be sure then. How shall I behold the face henceforth of God or angel, erst with joy and rapture so oft beheld? Those heavenly shapes will dazzle now this earthly with their blaze insufferably bright. Oh, might I here in solitude live savage, in some glade obscured where highest woods impenetrable to star or sunlight spread their umbrage broad and brown as evening. Cover me, ye pines! Ye cedars with innumerable boughs, hide me where I may never see them more. But let us now, as in bad plight, devise what best may for the present serve to hide the parts of each from other, that seem most to shame obnoxious and unseemliest seen. Some tree whose broad smooth leaves together sewed and girded on our loins may cover round those middle parts, that this newcomer, shame, there sit not, and reproach us as unclean. So counselled he, and both together went into the thickest wood. There soon they chose the fig tree, not that kind for fruit renowned, but such as at this day to Indians known, in Malabar or Deccan spreads her arms, branching so broad and long that in the ground the bended twigs take root, and daughters grow about the mother tree, a pillared shade high overarched, and echoing walks between. Thereof the Indian herdsman, shunning heat, shelters in cool, and tends his pasturing herds at loopholes cut through thickest shade. Those leaves they gathered, broad as Amazonian targ, and, with what skill they had, together sewed to gird their waist. Vain covering, if to hide their guilt and dreaded shame. Oh, how unlike to that first naked glory! Such of late Columbus found the American, so girt with feathered cincture, naked else, and wild among the trees on isles and woody shores. Thus fenced, and as they thought their shame in part covered, but not at rest or ease of mind, they sat them down to weep. Nor only tears rained at their eyes, but high winds worse within began to rise, high passions, anger, hate, mistrust, suspicion, discord, and shook sore their inward state of mind, calm region once and full of peace, now tossed and turbulent. For understanding ruled not, and the will heard not her law, both in subjection now to sensual appetite, who from beneath, usurping over sovereign reason, claimed superior sway. From thus distempered breast, Adam, estranged in look and altered style, speech intermitted thus to Eve renewed. Would thou hast hearkened to my words, and stayed with me as I besought thee when that strange desire of wandering, this unhappy morn I know not whence, possessed thee. We had then remained still happy, not as now despoiled of all our good, shamed, naked, miserable. Let none henceforth seek needless cause to approve the faith they owe. When earnestly they seek such proof, conclude they then begin to fail. To whom, soon moved with touch of blame, thus Eve, What words have passed thy lips, Adam, severe? Imputest thou that to my default, or will of wandering, as thou call'st it, which who knows but might as ill have happened, thou being by, or to thyself perhaps? Hadst thou been there, or here the attempt, thou couldst not have discerned fraud in the serpent speaking as he spake. no ground of enmity between us known, why he should mean me ill or seek to harm? Was I to have never parted from thy side? As good have grown there still a lifeless rib. Being as I am, why didst not thou, the head, command me absolutely not to go, going into such danger as thou saidst? Too facile, then, thou didst not much gainsay, nay, didst permit, approve, and fair dismiss. Hadst thou been firm and fixed in thy dissent, neither had I transgressed, nor thou with me. To whom then, first incensed, Adam replied, Is this the love? Is this the recompense of mine to thee, ingrateful Eve, expressed immutable, when thou wert lost, not I, who might have lived and enjoyed immortal bliss, yet willingly chose rather death with thee? And am I now upbraided as the cause of thy transgressing? Not enough severe, it seems, in thy restraint. What could I more? I warned thee, I admonished thee, foretold the danger and the lurking enemy that lay in wait. Beyond this had been force, and force upon free will hath here no place. But confidence then bore thee on, secure, either to meet no danger or to find matter of glorious trial. And perhaps I also erred, in overmuch admiring what seemed in thee so perfect, that I thought no evil durst attempt thee. But I rue the error now, which is become my crime, and thou the accuser. Thus it shall befall him, who to worth in women over-trusting lets her will rule. Restraint she will not brook, and left to herself, if evil thence ensue, she first his weak indulgence will accuse. Thus they, in mutual accusation, spent the fruitless hours, but neither self-condemning, and of their vain contest appeared no end. Book 10. The Argument. Man's transgression known. The guardian angels forsake paradise, and return up to heaven to approve their vigilance, and are approved, God declaring that the entrance of Satan could not be by them prevented. He sends his Son to judge the transgressors, who descends and gives sentence accordingly. Then, in pity, clothes them both, and reascends. Sin and death, sitting till then at the gates of hell, by wondrous sympathy feeling the success of Satan in this new world, and the sin by man there committed, resolve to sit no longer confined in hell, but to follow Satan their sire up to the place of man. To make the way easier from hell to this world to and fro, they pave a broad highway or bridge over chaos, according to the track that Satan first made. Then, preparing for earth, they meet him, proud of his success, returning to hell. Their mutual gratulation. Satan arrives at Pandemonium, in full of assembly relates with boasting his success against man. Instead of applause, is entertained with a general hiss by all his audience, transformed with himself also suddenly into serpents, according to his doom given in paradise. Then, deluded with the show of the forbidden tree springing up before them, they greedily reaching to take of the fruit, chew dust and bitter ashes. The proceedings of sin and death. God foretells the final victory of his Son over them, and the renewing of all things, but for the present commands his angels to make several alterations in the heavens and elements. Adam, more and more perceiving his fallen condition, heavily bewails, rejects the condolement of Eve. She persists, and at length appeases him. Then, to evade the curse likely to fall on their offspring, proposes to Adam violent ways which he approves not, but conceiving better hope, puts her in mind of the late promise made them, that her seed should be revenged on the serpent, and exhorts her with him to seek peace of the offended deity by repentance and supplication. Book 10. Meanwhile the heinous and despiteful act of Satan, done in paradise, and how he and the serpent had perverted Eve, her husband she, to taste the fatal fruit, was known in heaven. For what can scape the eye of God all-seeing, or deceive his heart omniscient? Who in all things wise and just hindered not Satan to attempt the mind of man, with strength entire and free will armed complete, to have discovered and repulsed whatever wiles of foe or seeming friend. For still they knew, and ought to have still remembered, the high injunction not to taste that fruit whoever tempted, which they not obeying incurred, what could they less? The penalty, and, manifold in sin, deserved to fall. Up into heaven from paradise in haste the angelic guards ascended, mute and sad, for man. For of his state by this they knew, much wondering how the subtle fiend had stolen entrance unseen. Soon as the unwelcome news from earth arrived at heaven gate, displeased all were who heard. Dim sadness did not spare that time celestial visages, yet mixed with pity, violated not their bliss. About the new arrived in multitudes the ethereal people ran, to hear and know how all befell. They towards the throne supreme, accountable, made haste to make appear, with righteous plea, their utmost vigilance, and easily approved, when the Most High Eternal Father, from his secret cloud, amidst in thunder, uttered thus his voice. Assembled angels, and ye powers returned from unsuccessful charge, be not dismayed, nor troubled at these tidings from the earth, which your sincerest care could not prevent. Foretold so lately what would come to pass, when first this tempter crossed the gulf from hell. I told ye then he should prevail and speed on his bad errand, men should be seduced and flattered out of all, believing lies against his Maker. No decree of mine concurring to necessitate his fall, or touch with lightest moment of impulse his free will, to her own inclining left, in even scale. But fallen he is, and now what rests, but that the mortal sentence pass on his transgression, death denounced that day, which he presumes already vain and void, because not yet inflicted as he feared by some immediate stroke, but soon shall find forbearance no acquittance ere day end. Justice shall not return as bounty scorned. But whom send I to judge them? Whom but thee, vicegerent Son? To thee I have transferred all judgment, whether in heaven or earth or hell. Easy it may be seen that I intend mercy colleague with justice, sending thee, man's friend, his mediator, his designed, both ransom and redeemer voluntary, and destined, man himself to judge, man fallen. So spake the Father, and unfolding bright toward the right hand his glory, on the Son blazed forth unclouded deity. He, full resplendent, all his Father manifest expressed, and thus divinely answered mild, Father eternal, thine is to decree, mine both in heaven and earth to do thy will supreme, that thou in me, thy Son beloved, mayst ever rest well pleased. I go to judge on earth these thy transgressors, but thou knowest whoever judged, the worst on me must light when time shall be, for so I undertook before thee, and not repenting this obtain of right, that I may mitigate their doom on me derived. Yet I shall temper so justice with mercy, as may illustrate most them fully satisfied, and thee appease. Attendance none shall need, nor train where none are to behold the judgment, but the judged, those two. The third, best absent is condemned, convict by flight and rebel to all law. Conviction to the serpent none belongs. Thus saying, from his radiant seat he rose, of high collateral glory, him thrones and powers, princedoms and dominations ministrant, accompanied to heaven gate, from whence Eden and all the coast in prospect lay. Down he descended straight, the speed of gods time counts not, though with swiftest minutes winged. Now was the sun in western cadence low from noon, and gentle airs due at their hour, to fan the earth now waked, and usher in the evening cool, when he, from wrath more cool, came the mild judge and intercessor both to sentence man. The voice of God they heard now walking in the garden, by soft winds brought to their ears while day declined. They heard, and from his presence hid themselves among the thickest trees, both man and wife, till God approaching, thus to Adam called aloud, "Where art thou, Adam? Wont with joy to meet my coming, seen far off. I miss thee here, not pleased thus entertained with solitude, where obvious duty erewhile appeared unsought. Or come I less conspicuous? Or what change absents thee, or what chance detains? Come forth." He came, and with him Eve, more loath, though first to offend. Discountenanced both and discomposed, love was not in their looks, either to God or to each other, but apparent guilt and shame, and perturbation and despair, anger and obstinacy and hate and guile. Whence Adam, faltering long, thus answered brief, "I heard thee in the garden, and of thy voice afraid, being naked, hid myself." To whom the gracious judge without revile replied, "My voice thou oft hast heard, and hast not feared, but still rejoiced. How is it now become so dreadful to thee, that thou art naked? Who hath told thee? Hast thou eaten of the tree, whereof I gave thee charge thou shouldst not eat?" To whom thus Adam, sore beset, replied, "O heaven, in evil strait this day I stand before my judge, either to undergo myself the total crime, or to accuse my other self, the partner of my life, whose failing, while her faith to me remains, I should conceal and not expose to blame by my complaint. But strict necessity subdues me, and calamitous constraint, lest on my head both sin and punishment, however insupportable, be all devolved. Though should I hold my peace, yet thou wouldst easily detect what I conceal. This woman, whom thou madest to be my help, and gavest me as thy perfect gift, so good, so fit, so acceptable, so divine, that from her hand I could suspect no ill, and what she did, whatever in itself her doing seemed to justify the deed, she gave me of the tree, and I did eat." To whom the sovereign presence thus replied, "Was she thy God, that her thou didst obey before his voice? Or was she made thy guide superior, or but equal, that to her thou didst resign thy manhood and the place wherein God set thee, above her made of thee, and for thee whose perfection far excelled hers in all real dignity? Adorned she was indeed and lovely, to attract thy love, not thy subjection, and her gifts were such as, under government, well seemed. Unseemly to bear rule, which was thy part and person, hadst thou known thyself aright." So having said, he thus to Eve in few, "Say, woman, what is this which thou hast done?" To whom sad Eve, with shame nigh overwhelmed, confessing soon, yet not before her judge bold or loquacious, thus abashed replied, "The serpent me beguiled, and I did eat." Which when the Lord God heard, without delay to judgment he proceeded on the accused serpent, though brute, unable to transfer the guilt on him who made him instrument of mischief and polluted from the end of his creation. Justly then accursed, as vitiated in nature, more to know concerned not man, since he no further knew, nor altered his offence. Yet God at last to Satan first in sin his doom applied, though in mysterious terms judged as then best. And on the serpent thus his curse let fall. Because thou hast done this, thou art accursed above all cattle, each beast of the field. Upon thy belly grovelling thou shalt go, and dust shall eat all the days of thy life. Between thee and the woman I will put enmity, and between thine and her seed. Her seed shall bruise thy head, thou bruise his heel. So spake this oracle, then verified when Jesus, son of Mary, second Eve, saw Satan fall like lightning down from heaven, prince of the air. Then, rising from his grave, spoiled principalities and powers, triumphed in open show, and with ascension bright captivity led captive through the air, the realm itself of Satan, long usurped. Whom he shall tread at last under our feet, even he, who now foretold his fatal bruise, and to the woman thus his sentence turned. Thy sorrow I will greatly multiply by thy conception. Children thou shalt bring in sorrow forth, and to thy husband's will thine shall submit, he over thee shall rule. On Adam last, thus judgment he pronounced. Because thou hast hearkened to the voice of thy wife, and eaten of the tree concerning which I charged thee, saying, Thou shalt not eat thereof. Cursed is the ground for thy sake. Thou in sorrow shalt eat thereof all the days of thy life. Thorns also, and thistles it shall bring thee forth unbid, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground. For thou out of the ground wast taken, know thy birth. For dust thou art, and shalt to dust return. So judged he man, both judge and Saviour sent, and the instant stroke of death denounced that day, removed far off. Then, pitying how they stood before him naked to the air that now must suffer change, disdained not to begin thenceforth the form of servant to assume, as when he washed his servants' feet. So now, as father of his family, he clad their nakedness with skins of beasts or slain, or as the snake with youthful coat repaid, and thought not much to clothe his enemies. Nor he their outward only with the skins of beasts, but inward nakedness much more opprobrious, with his robe of righteousness arraying, covered from his father's sight. To him with swift ascent he up-returned, into his blissful bosom reassumed in glory as of old. To him appeased all, though all-knowing, what had passed with man recounted, mixing intercession sweet. Meanwhile, ere thus was sinned and judged on earth, within the gates of hell sat sin and death, in counterview within the gates that now stood open wide, belching outrageous flame far into chaos, since the fiend passed through, sin opening, who thus now to death began. O son, why sit we here, each other viewing idly, while Satan, our great author, thrives in other worlds and happier seat provides for us, his offspring dear? It cannot be but that success attends him, if mishap, ere this he had returned, with fury driven by his avengers, since no place like this can fit his punishment or their revenge. Methinks I feel new strength within me rise, wings growing, and dominion given me large beyond this deep, whatever draws me on, or sympathy, or some co-natural force, powerful at greatest distance to unite with secret amity things of like kind by secretest conveyance. Thou, my shade inseparable, must with me along, for death from sin no power can separate. But, lest the difficulty of passing back stay his return perhaps over this gulf impassable, impervious, Let us try adventurous work, yet to thy power and mine not unagreeable, to found a path over this main from hell to that new world where Satan now prevails. A monument of merit high to all the infernal host, easing their passage hence for intercourse or transmigration as their lot shall lead. Nor can I miss the way so strongly drawn by this new felt attraction and instinct. Whom thus the meagre shadow answered soon, Go, whither fate and inclination strong leads thee. I shall not lag behind, nor err the way thou leading. Such a scent I draw of carnage, prey innumerable, and taste the savour of death from all things there that live. Nor shall I to the work thou enterprisest be wanting, but afford thee equal aid. So saying, with delight he snuffed the smell of mortal change on earth, as when a flock of ravenous fowl, though many a league remote against the day of battle, to a field where armies lie encamped, come flying, lured with scent of living carcasses designed for death, the following day in bloody fight. So scented the grim feature, and upturned his nostril wide into the murky air, sagacious of his quarry from so far. Then both from out hell gates into the waste wide anarchy of chaos, damp and dark, flew diverse, and with power, their power was great, hovering upon the waters what they met, solid or slimy, as in raging sea, tossed up and down, together crowded drove, from each side shoaling towards the mouth of hell. As when two polar winds, blowing adverse upon the Cronian sea, together drive mountains of ice, that stop the imagined way beyond Petsora eastward to the rich Cathayan coast, the aggregated soil, death, with his mace petrific, cold and dry, as with a trident, smote, and fixed as firm as Delos floating once. The rest, his look bound with Gorgonian rigour not to move, and with asphaltic slime broad as the gate, deep to the roots of hell the gathered beach they fastened, and the mole immense wrought on, over the foaming deep, high-arched, a bridge of length prodigious, joining to the wall immovable of this now fenceless world, forfeit to death. From hence, a passage, broad, smooth, easy, inoffensive, down to hell. So, if great things to small may be compared, Xerxes, the liberty of Greece to yoke, from Susa, his Memnonian palace high, came to the sea. And over Hellespont, bridging his way, Europe with Asia joined, and scourged with many a stroke the indignant waves. Now had they brought the work by wondrous art pontifical, a ridge of pendant rock over the vexed abyss, following the track of Satan to the selfsame place where he first lighted from his wing and landed safe from out of chaos to the outside bare of this round world. With pins of adamant and chains they made all fast, too fast they made, and durable. And now, in little space, the confines met of empyrean heaven, and of this world, and on the left hand, hell, with long reach interposed. 3 several ways in sight to each of these 3 places led. And now their way to earth they had descried, to paradise first tending, when, behold, Satan, in likeness of an angel bright, betwixt the centaur and the scorpion steering his zenith, while the sun in Aries rose, disguised he came. But those his children dear their parents soon discerned, though in disguise. He, after Eve seduced, unminded slunk into the wood fast by, and, changing shape to observe the sequel, saw his guileful act by Eve, though all unweeting, seconded upon her husband, saw their shame that sought vain covertures. But when he saw descend the Son of God to judge them, terrified he fled, not hoping to escape, but shun the present, fearing, guilty, what his wrath might suddenly inflict, that past, returned by night, and listening where the hapless pair sat in their sad discourse and various plaint, thence gathered his own doom, which understood, not instant but of future time, with joy and tidings fraught, to hell he now returned. And at the brink of chaos, near the foot of this new wondrous pontifice, unhoped met, who to meet him came, his offspring dear. Great joy was at their meeting, and at sight of that stupendous bridge his joy increased. Long he admiring stood, till Sin, his fair enchanting daughter, thus the silence broke. O parent, these are thy magnific deeds, thy trophies, which thou viewest as not thine own. Thou art their author and prime architect, for I no sooner in my heart divined, my heart, which by a secret harmony still moves with thine, joined in connection sweet, that thou on earth hadst prospered, which thy looks now also evidence. But straight I felt, though distant from the worlds between, yet felt that I must after thee with this thy son. Such fatal consequence unites us three. Hell could no longer hold us in our bounds, nor this unvoyageable gulf obscure detain from following thy illustrious track. Thou hast achieved our liberty, confined within hell gates till now. Thou us empowered to fortify thus far, and overlay with this portentous bridge the dark abyss. Thine now is all this world. Thy virtue hath won what thy hands builded not. Thy wisdom gained with odds what war hath lost, and fully avenged our foil in heaven. Here thou shalt monarch reign, there didst not. There let him still victor sway, as battle hath adjudged. From this new world retiring, by his own doom alienated. And henceforth monarchy with thee divide of all things, parted by the imperial bounds, his quadrature from thy orbicular world, or try thee now more dangerous to his throne. Whom thus the Prince of Darkness answered glad, Fair daughter, and thou son and grandchild both, high proof ye now have given to be the race of Satan, for I glory in the name, antagonist of heaven's almighty King. Amply have merited of me, of all the infernal empire, that so near heaven's door triumphal with triumphal act have met, mine with this glorious work, and made one realm, hell and this world, one realm, one continent of easy thoroughfare. Therefore, while I descend through darkness on your road with ease to my associate powers, them to acquaint with these successes and with them rejoice, you too this way, among these numerous orbs, all yours right down to paradise, descend, there dwell, and reign in bliss, thence on the earth dominion exercise, and in the air, chiefly on man. So Lord of all declared, him first make sure your thrall, and lastly kill. My substitutes I send ye, and create plenipotent on earth of matchless might issuing from me. On your joint vigour now my hold of this new kingdom all depends, through sin to death exposed by my exploit. If your joint power prevail, the affairs of hell no detriment need fear. Go and be strong,